What if I told you that you could squeeze out even more FPS from your AMD GPU? And no, it's not by overclocking. Don't believe me? Well, get ready to be amazed, because I have a game-changing solution for you. We're talking about Smart Access Memory, a technology that's only been available on the latest AMD GPUs until recently. People figured out how to get this feature working on officially unsupported graphics cards from AMD via registry tweaks.
Amazing!
You can enable Smart Access Memory on older AMD GPUs instead of only the newer ones. I'm talking about using Smart Access Memory on GPUs as old as Polaris, Vega, and Radeon 7. With Smart Access Memory, you can tap into your GPU's full potential and potentially get a significant FPS boost. And the best part is, it's completely free. In this video, I'll show you exactly how to unlock Smart Access Memory for older AMD GPUs and get a noticeable FPS boost in specific games. There are a few requirements for this to work. You need a system capable of enabling resizable bar, the latest AMD GPU drivers, and a Polaris, Vega, or Radeon 7 graphics card or newer. As for your BIOS settings, the above 4G decoding option needs to be enabled. Rebar needs to be enabled or set to auto. Your Windows install needs to be UEFI based and not legacy based. UEFI means CSM needs to be disabled. The next step is to open the link in the description and download the registry file called Rebar Legacy On. After downloading, run it and accept the prompts. Then restart your PC. Open your AMD software and go to the Performance tab and click on Tuning. There, you'll find that the AMD Smart Access Memory option has been unlocked. Now, you can enable it. I have spent countless hours testing and benchmarking this feature, and here are the results. For the system specs for this test, I'm using the legendary RX 480 8GB GPU and the Ryzen 5 3600X CPU on an MSI B450A Pro Max motherboard, coupled with 16GB of DDR4 3200MHz RAM running on Windows 10. I'm using my optimized settings for every game in this test, which you can watch my videos on them in the playlist in the top right. For the first game on this list, I picked Atomic Heart on DX11. Enabling SAM increased the average FPS from 47.1 to 49.6. That's just over a 5% increase in FPS. The minimum FPS increased from 37.9 to 38.8, and that's just over 2%. DirectX 12, on the other hand, saw no benefit from SAM. We're off to a good start so far. Now, for a beloved game to all of us, Hogwarts Legacy. Turning on SAM increased the average frame rate from 59 to 62.3 FPS, and the minimum from 53.3 to 56.5 FPS. That's a very nice 6% improvement that I'm sure everyone needs in this title. Now for Sons of the Forest, a surprisingly demanding game. SAM had no visible impact on performance. The results are almost identical here. Next is Returnal. SAM made no difference to FPS, like at all, which is kind of a letdown. But from what we know, the performance gains depend on the games, so let's move on to the next one. Forza Horizon 5 had incredible gains by turning on SAM. The average FPS increased from 49 to 55 FPS, and the minimum increased from 39 to 43 FPS. That's about a 12% increase in average FPS and 9% in minimum FPS. The impact of this single setting on the GPU's performance is simply remarkable, catapulting it into a higher tier. Trust me, this setting is no joke when it works. In fact, I've seen other reviewers get around 20% more FPS with SAM enabled, but I guess 12% on my old system is very acceptable. Next, we have Forspoken, a game that managed to have terrible gameplay, graphics, performance, and story at the same time, making it truly one of the most disappointing games in recent history. SAM had no impact on performance at all. Both settings managed to get an average of 38 FPS. That is with FSR2 enabled, by the way, just to show you how terribly optimized this game is. Since nobody cares about this game, I'll most likely drop it from my benchmarks to focus on more worthy games. Spider-Man Miles Morales with SAM disabled managed to get an average of 52 FPS and a minimum of 38 FPS, while with SAM enabled, the average FPS increased by 2, making it 54 FPS. But, interestingly, the minimum FPS stayed the same. This is most likely within the margin of error, so I'm not gonna count this one as an uplift. Next, we have Hitman 3, World of Assassination. SAM made no difference in the average FPS. However, the minimum increased from 43.5 to 45.9 FPS, which is around 5.5%. An increase in the minimum FPS is vital to the performance of any game, and 5.5% is very respectable. Assassin's Creed Valhalla managed to get a small but noticeable improvement in both the average and minimum FPS, around a 1 to 1.5% increase respectively. I tested this multiple times and the improvement was consistent. Therefore, it is not within the margin of error. Any increase in FPS, no matter how small, is welcome. Moving on to another Assassin's Creed game. This time, it's Odyssey. I wanted to see if it running on DX11 and being more CPU limited than its older brother would show different results. The game gave the exact same FPS with SAM enabled and disabled in both average and minimum FPS. No improvements here. Testing Cyberpunk 2077. I saw a very worthwhile improvement. The game averaged 62 FPS with SAM disabled and almost 65 FPS with SAM enabled. The minimum FPS had an even bigger improvement. It increased from 48 to 52 FPS. That's around a 5% increase in average FPS and a 9% increase in minimum FPS. Considering how demanding Cyberpunk 2077 is, a 9% performance improvement for free is very impressive. This game really benefits from SAM. Moving to Dying Light 2, the DX11 API saw absolutely zero performance difference in both the averages and minimums. However, switching over to the more demanding DirectX 12 API, the minimum FPS increased from 54 to 58 FPS, while the average FPS increased from 63 to 67. That's about a 7.5% improvement in minimum FPS and 6% in average FPS, which is just outstanding. It's safe to say SAM definitely increases FPS in Dying Light 2 on DX12. Lastly, we have the fan favorite, recently botched Witcher 3 Next Gen version. On DX11, without SAM, the game averaged 68 FPS and a minimum of 58 FPS. With SAM, the game lost 1 FPS in the average and gained 1 FPS in the minimum, most likely within the margin of error. DirectX 12 saw absolutely no change in performance. Both averaged 58 FPS and 51 minimum FPS. It's safe to say that SAM made no difference here. So, after all these tests and benchmarks, what is my conclusion about enabling SAM on older, officially unsupported GPUs? And should you turn it on for your system, assuming it meets the necessary requirements mentioned earlier? Smart access memory is without a doubt a smart method to increase performance for free in specific titles. According to my tests, when turned on, it never decreased performance. Worst case scenario, the FPS stayed the same. Best case scenario, in some games, performance increased up to 12% on my system, and other users online got even higher performance improvements of up to 20%. The biggest gains here were seen in Forza Horizon 5, Cyberpunk 2077, Hogwarts Legacy, and Dying Light 2 on DX12, while other titles had smaller improvements or none at all. I noticed that some games that supported both DX11 and DX12 saw an increase in one API, while the other saw no increase at all, which is interesting for sure. Smart access memory is a must-have if your system supports it, and especially if you play any of the games that benefited from the feature mentioned earlier. After all, you get free FPS for literally clicking on a setting in the AMD control panel. Might as well call it the free FPS setting. One question I have is, why did the developers not officially enable SAM support for these older GPUs if they also get noticeable performance improvements just as well or almost just as well as the newer cards? Could it be greed because they want to promote their newer cards? Could it be an oversight? Could it be something else? Why don't you tell me your opinion in the comment section?